Before we begin, thank you very much to... Can I just say I love how unique and alien Galvatron's alt mode is? Pretty much no one turns into anything quite like it. For joining the Patreon campaign, that's a statement to make. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's literally the only canon Transformer in Transformers, at least canonically. I apologize for what I did. I blame it on the patron, but thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you for supporting the channel. We are back to Here's 10, and that means we are looking at yet another year of Transformers. For the 40th anniversary, I am going through every single year of Transformers and doing the 10 best toys of every single year, and here we come to 1987. This is the throw it at the wall year. This is literally them going, what can we make a toy do? So we just get gimmicks all over the place. Mini-bots go away in favor of throttle bots with pullback motors. Combiners return, but now we're getting sci-fi with Technobots and Alien with Terror Cons. We are getting clones. We are getting Target Masters, Headmasters, some new mini cassettes for Soundwave. You know, we've got triple changing Headmasters, we got 6 changers, we got new bases, we got all kinds of things. You know, some of them are one-off gimmicks they never did again. And all just trying to figure out what would be fun toys to make out of this franchise. At the same time, the simplification that began in 1986 was in full effect here, so the toys themselves are going to be far simpler and much more prone to just opinion as far as which ones were the best. That said, I do have a list. It is not in any way objective, I will admit, but I think we came as close as we could. So let us begin looking at the best toys of 1987, starting with number 10, and as usual, number 10 on any top 10 list is reserved for a pet favorite, and you'll excuse me that if out of all of the Headmasters I could include in this list, we're going to talk about Skull Cruncher. Okay, so let's admit, a lot of the Headmaster toys, while the Headmaster gimmick is fun and being able to have a little figure riding inside your vehicle mode big figure, that's cool, but most of them were very simple figures and there were just better toys to be bought that year. There's a few on the list, but I'm keeping it selective. But Skull Cruncher I have always loved, before I was a Floridian, so this is not me being biased. Love the colors, love the look. He kind of gets a vague amount of Dinobot vibes to him with the spines on going down his legs and the tails hanging off of the sides. He just always looked good to me. Like, even, like, amongst all of the basic 7 Headmasters, he still appeals to me the most. I can admit that there are better ones, but again, this is just a personal preference thing, as many of the first half of this list are going to be. That said, I think I put him ahead, especially ahead of the Decepticon Headmasters, based on how his Headmaster Grax rides in him, which is in his mouth. He has to eat his Headmaster. For some reason, I think that's a lot more fun than just putting him in a cockpit. And they could have just added a cockpit to the top of the head. No. Big, gigantic croc mouth. Skull Cruncher is a fun toy. Definitely an oddball amongst the Headmasters, but no, I think that toy is a lot of fun. This is a year where we start adding dragons to the Transformer lineup, and you'll excuse me if I put more than one on this list because they are doing some technically impressive things for mid-80s toys. Case in point, Hunger. Hunger as a combiner team leader, I wouldn't expect to do much. Now keep in mind, he is kind of like he's kind of the post-combiner style, where like the original set that were designed for Diaclone had little base modes. Hunger doesn't bother with that. He don't need that. He doesn't even have like the artillery mode thing that Scattershot does, which almost got Scattershot on the list, by the way. But Hunger makes the list because of just how technically advanced he is. Aside from really nice looking robot mode. I love how the robot mode looks. It's well proportioned. The purple pops really well against the gray and the off-white. It's articulation level. It's the level of play this toy has, considering it has to be a torso for a combiner. It's kind of amazing how much this toy can do. The legs especially have the articulation of like a toy 2 decades ahead of him. You know, like proper ratchet hip joints and everything. It's kind of impressive how advanced this figure is, and really like how much it has, especially for how much it has to do. Now, granted, the beast mode is easy comparatively, but I do still like the two-headed dragon look. I just think overall, like for a combiner torso, it has to do a lot already. It's doing a lot more on top of that, which I think deserves praise. Oh, but he is not the only dragon released in 1987. We do have one more that I do believe belongs on this list. This is another pet favorite of mine, but I do think that Double Cross can be a little bit more objectively included in a list like this. Maybe not as technically advanced as Hunger as far as just like articulation level goes, but man, do I love the look of this toy in both of its modes. The two-headed dragon with the classic upright, design. Love that. I really do. I really like how the dragon heads are kind of designed. I like the off-white top, like they're kind of like skull-headed dragons. Like between that and the fact his name is Double Cross, he really should not be an Autobot, but Autobot he is, and I think he makes for a really, really fun one. And yeah, like surprisingly, again, he does have a decent level of articulation thanks to how his heads have to work in beast mode. I think that's just the key to get Transformers high articulation levels in the 80s. Just make their beast mode heads their arms, because they will require lots of joints in order to pull it off. On a technical level, I can admit this isn't as good as Hunger, but just on a design level, I just like this one a lot better. You know, like, and he does have gimmicks to him that I think are done better by his fellow monster bots. But you know what? Putting those aside, this guy gets by on just looking and feeling just really cool. Like I said, a lot of the Headmasters are kind of samey, kind of simple. It's usually just fold legs out and bulk of vehicle folds up onto the back. So a lot of them are just kind of dull, you know. I mean, the Headmaster gimmick is fun, but the toys themselves aren't that thrilling. But there is one that I would give some notice to, one that I do have particular love for, and that's going to be Hardhead. Aside from the fact he doesn't rely on dumping a ton of his alt mode onto his back, you know, so he looks a lot cleaner in robot mode, you also just have a really interesting tank mode. Keep in mind, tanks to this point have been kind of limited to your traditional standard style tank, you know, Blitzwing, Warpath, Brawl, and that's pretty much it. This was the first sci-fi tank we got, our first look at what like an H-tank would eventually look like in Transformers. And he's an overall good look. He gets the military colors in there with the grays and the greens, but he still has this nice visual pop to him. I think the black actually like comes through really strong in the robot mode. Like it just kind of, it's a good offset for the green and the gray. And he just has a really nice look to him and just a really nice feel when you play with the figure. So if I'm going for Autobot Headmasters, this is my choice. You know, as long as we're talking just standard Headmaster design. Nice look, nice play, nice alt mode, just nice figure all around. This is again kind of a personal choice, but it's one that I really don't care if I rank it this high. I think I can make absolute justification for this. At number 6, we need to talk about Grotusk. Okay, let's get this aside right now. The beast mode makes no sense whatsoever. It's this saber-toothed gargoyle looking monster. I think it looks really cool. That's a personal thing. That's, you know, your mileage may vary. I think it looks really, really cool. I like the color scheme with the two-tone reds. You know, the blue as the chest pops really, really well. The wings, like they're an interesting, like high set of wings that we don't normally see. Considering he's a beast former, he doesn't do too bad of a job cleaning up. He's got a big saber-tooth head on his back and some legs on his legs. I think the counter to that is he actually has some fun and different elements of transformation, especially with like how the legs work in order to get them flipped around properly. It's a really, really interesting figure. Also, this is another one of those, like, I believe all the Monster Bots had the Cold Spark gimmick, but, oh, his was the best. So, because his head wasn't too huge, like on Repugnus, the Cold Spark actually works really well and throws the sparks all over out of his mouth. It's such a cool gimmick to be able to make a toy do. It's a shame these things wear out so easily, so a lot of the old ones can't do it anymore, and we can't make new ones that do the Cold Spark gimmick because some Barbie doll caught fire or something. Like, it's just not allowed anymore. Point being, it's a really fun figure, and a really cool and unique figure as well. Technically cool and just visually, especially if you really like the Beast Mode, which I do really like the Beast Mode. So put some respect on Grotesque. He has his own style to just about everything. As I said, 1987 was all about throwing gimmicks at the wall and just seeing what they could do with the Transformer concept, and one of the ideas they came up with was, what if we made a character who instead of one robot mode had two? This is where we get the double spy punch, counter punch. We see him here in his counter punch mode, but he also does have an Autobot mode, which flips around a lot of details and does a really good job, actually. Like, they look like two separate toys that just happen to share a color scheme. It's a really neat gimmick, and it's one that they've only repeated, to my knowledge, to my recollection, once, and that was animated Shockwave. But before then, no. Double Spy, Punch, Counterpunch, whatever you want to call him, stood alone with this super interesting gimmick. I think more interesting the fact that he is a very deceptive character who aligns himself with the Autobots. This seems like a very Decepticon thing to do. But you know what? It gives the Autobots a little bit of a unique edge to them. Like a much needed edge they needed by the time 1987 ran around. They were willing to go the deceptive route now. Ha ha ha. And it's a really cool figure. Any figure like this that gives you different things to do is going to be fun to mess with. It's going to stand out really uniquely. And I think it's impressive that even today, this figure from 1987 still stands out for how unique it is. For me, the king of all toy grading is play value. It can look really cool, it can have really cool tricks, but at the end of the day, it's got to be fun. And the more that it can do without really screwing up, the more fun it's going to be. Case in point, Snapdragon. Talk about doing a lot. Okay, so for starters, Headmaster Horror Con. So you've got the Headmaster gimmick intact on this figure. You also have triple changing. So he had a T-Rex mode, not a dragon. We had to specify this before. He has a T-Rex mode, and he has a jet mode, which is like very SR-71 Blackbird looking. It's a super cool looking jet. And the thing is, both alt modes look pretty good. I think the T-Rex is a little bit jank. But I think that's mostly due to color placement. If you look, it's super clever. It's like to use the big engines as the T-Rex legs, to use the nose cone of the jet as the actual tail. There's a lot of really clever design going on here to make both the modes work, and to make a robot mode that actually looks really, really decent. Classic Decepticon colors. Looks nice and balanced, nicely proportioned. Nothing, not too much hanging off the back. You can see the nose cone, but in comparison to his HorrorCon brethren, Apeface, Apeface's jet mode just doesn't stack up at all. I think the beast mode looks worse, and most of his beast mode hangs off his back, so he has terrible balance issues. I owned both. I only kept one of them. And yeah, Snapdragon still ranks among some of my favorite Transformers I have ever messed with. It's one of the few that I actually went and got a third party like Legends, just so I can have them on my desk to mess with. Super cool. Super cool design, super cool figure. Shame that the modern one kind of shelf-warmed, because the play value in this guy is modern or original, really, really strong. 87 was the final year of what we know as the traditional city bots, the characters who would eventually become our modern titans. So they went out with a bang, producing the largest Transformer of that date, and it would be a long time before it was ever eclipsed. That was the original G1 Fortress Maximus. We call these city bots because, you can have your cars running around them in their base mode, but let's be honest, that's all they were, base modes. But Fortress Maximus is the closest they come to looking like an actual city. He's got a lot more ramps, he's got an elevator, he's got towers, and probably the most solid looking base mode of all of them. If all you know is the modern Fort Max, you do not know Fort Max. The original toy is so much cooler and does so much more. You got everything you could want out of a play set, and it turns into a gigantic robot who also looks really cool. With a ton of hidden guns, by the way. The only reason I don't place him higher is because there's a couple that I think that are a little bit more impressive as far as just being fun to play with. And frankly, at some point, toy can be a little bit too big. Like, I have this toy, and I have to wrestle with it if I actually want to get it into base mode or flight mode. I can't imagine doing it as a kid when this thing is half my size. That just seems excessive. So, for ease of play, I think there's a few that outrank him, but number 3 for the then biggest Transformer ever, that's still a respectable spot. If you've been around this channel long enough, you shouldn't be surprised by who is at number 2, because it's a toy that I obsessed over as a child, traumatized me as a child, and then one of the first things I ever picked up when I was an adult on the internet and had access to these old toys, the original G1 Scorponok. Okay, so, granted, doesn't have quite as much play value going on as Fortress Maximus, but when you compare some other things, you could start to argue that. Fortress Maximus has a flight mode that really is just his city mode stretched out, whereas Scorponok has a big mechanical scorpion mode. That comes across way cooler, and for a long time, it was the largest animal transformer we had ever had. Like, even now, I think it only ranks number 2 behind Supreme Cheetor, maybe Air Attack Optimus Prime, rather. I don't own those to check. Either way, huge mechanical scorpion, already cool. And really, like, a cool-looking base mode. I think the base mode for Scorponok looks really, really cool as well. And then you just get into a more visually dynamic robot mode. Color-wise, got a lot more going on. Like, Fort Max looks cool, but he's mostly white and gray, and I don't think the dark blue does him any favors as far as just, like, standing out. But it's hard. It's hard to ignore Scorponok, and the purple and green is so classic as a Decepticon coloration combination. I mean, I've always loved the look of this figure. Always loved the look of it. Again, personal preference. You could swap Fort Max and Scorponok just fine, and, I don't think anyone would argue those placements. For me, the big Scorpion just barely edges out the city. But there is one that tops them both, and he's not even a city transformer. Remember, play value is so important when it comes to these lists. So no surprise when number 1 for 1987 is the Six Changer himself, Sixshot. The one Transformer army, the most challenging Transformer of them all. 6, and then technically 7 if you add. Now, back in 1987, an American kid didn't have access to Headmasters, had no idea about what the 7th mode was, didn't know about the Winged Wolf. But you know what? Didn't matter. Even at 6, this is a phenomenally impressive piece of engineering. And the fact that it's done so simply. A lot of his alt modes just kind of rely on just certain elements being twisted in the right direction. Or the toy being flipped, onto its belly or its back. But it works. It works. All 6 modes work, and they offer such a wide variety of play value. You want a toy plane? You got it. You want a toy wolf? You got it. You want a toy gun? You got it. So much. And it's one of those toys that has so many transformation elements going on, just ripe for fan moding and just making up whatever you wanted. Man. So much play value, on top of a character who just looks really freaking cool. Sixshot is always a standout when it comes to Transformers. Not only size, not only how much he can do, but also just visually. He's such a cool design. Yeah, this is the peak of 1987. If we're being completely honest here, I think this is where Transformers in Generation 1 peaked. Because everything after this starts downsizing, simplifying, and really doesn't hold as much interest. So, yeah, that's going to be my list for 1987. Sixshot, rightfully at number 1. And that's going to take us into 1988, where things are starting to get rough. The next few lists in this series are going to be a little bit brutal, so bear with me if it's going to be a whole lot of personal choices and just a whole lot of like, I guess he's number 7. Oh, it's going to be an interesting set. But that's for then. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.